Hey everybody, welcome to the RedBeard Podcast. Happy Halloween. This weekend is Halloween weekend, so I hope you guys are doing something fun. Today we got an awesome episode for you. We are going to keep this real Halloween packed for you. So we're going to talk about our 3 favorite top horror movies, and then we're also going to talk about whether or not we believe in ghosts and if we've had some experiences. And I know Ren is new to the podcast, so she has some experiences that we haven't heard about yet.
I don't believe it all.
Yeah, we knew that.
That's just foreshadowing.
Stay tuned.
RedBeard Podcast is brought to you by these cool dudes.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Ren, what's going on?
Hello.
Cooley, what's up, bro?
What up?
Dude, I'm excited because Halloween is this weekend. You guys are pumped. It sounded like you strained your voice on that, man. Are you okay?
So ridiculous.
You sounded like an old man that fell down.
Getting up.
That's going to be when we record this podcast when he's like 90. Welcome to the RedBeard Podcast. Yeah. I'm excited.
I got the mange.
God. Oh, man. Well, this weekend's Halloween. I'm pumped. I'm psyched because I think all of us are going to the same work party. Are you going?
Possibly, question mark.
Okay, cool. You're going, right?
Possibly, question mark.
All right, cool. Well, I'm going, so
I'm like,
that's one out of us.
I'm too old to watch people get sloppy that I don't even really like, but I get paid to be around.
It's going to be fun, though. Trust me, it's a good party.
If I could trust myself to go and not get so fucked up that I have no idea that I was there in the first place, I'll probably go, but I don't know.
You should go. It's going to be fun.
Bring a friend.
Anyway, so, yeah, being that it is Halloween weekend coming up, happy Friday, everybody. We're going to talk about our favorite 3 horror movies. And Ren, since you haven't been on a Halloween episode yet, I'm actually going to give you the honors to go first and talk about. Everybody's gonna do their number 3 first, and then we'll do our number 2 and go around. So
Word. Before you go though, can I just say that your enunciation is impeccable.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So
We're gonna talk about our top 3 favorite horror movies.
I don't know, man. I'm trying to keep my Rhode Island under wraps today. You guys have heard some weird R's just like go out the window in this podcast. So I could have said horror.
We're going to talk about our favorite horror movies today.
Yeah. Oh my God. So, all right, Ren, number 3 top horror movie. Go for it.
Okay, I would say that is 1992's Candyman.
Oh, wow. All right.
That is a
Candyman.
terrifying movie. It plays in with like the myth of saying, this creature's name 3 times, which is always terrifying because I'm sure many of us had played that as a child. And then it's a giant man with a hook hand covered in bees coming out of the wall at Cabrini Green in Chicago. Like, that's terrifying. He's terrifying. And he's so tall.
Yeah, he is.
And there's no happy ending. Like, even the one lady who's like, I can figure this all out. He's like, nah, you're coming with me. Bye.
Yeah.
There's like no happy ending. There's nothing positive in the whole entire movie. It's just like horror and death and weird graffiti for no reason. And it's a bad scene. It's very scary.
And Candyman was 80s. What, like late 80s, or was it early 90s?
92 was when it came out.
Was
Yeah,
early
early
90s.
90s.
Yeah, definitely. So, because that came out with a kid, and I remember like a lot of my friends were watching it, and then I watched that, and I was like, oh, wow, I'm not going to sleep for a little bit. You know what I mean? So, terrifying. Terrifying. Good movie. Good pick. Cooley, what's your top 3 or number 3?
I'm going to go with Night of the Comet.
Okay.
Ooh.
I've actually never heard of that.
Really?
Yeah. What's that?
So basically, have you heard of this, Ren?
No, I've never.
All right, this is something that may just be for me anyway. I believe it came out in the 80s. and it was basically just this this post-apocalyptic like era where, you know, this comet strikes. I actually think it might be in Chicago, and this town is just like basically like devastated, and like the people that survived, most of them have turned into like these mutants from the radiation from the comet. And there are these people, like most of the people that like not most of the people, but the survivors that are like the main characters of the movie are teenagers, or, you know, like basically in their like late teens, and they're basically like mall hoppers, and they go to the mall, and like they're basically just living it up in this post-apocalyptic world where there are no adults, nobody to tell them what to do. But like quickly, like they realize that, you know, things are not as fun as they should be, because there are all these like mutants and creatures and dangers that are present. And then like obviously the military gets involved, and it's just a really cool like vision of what would happen if you woke up one day and just everything was just, you know, devastated, like gone.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, not in reality, but for a movie, yeah.
Like if you woke up and your expectation was, I'm going to go to work today, and then you're like, oh, I guess I'm not going to work today, but you know what? I might go to the mall anyway and see what they got. You know? What about you, honey? Oh, you're a fucking zombie mutant. Okay, sorry. Gonna have to put you down. Going to the mall.
What happened since 10 o'clock when I went to sleep? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
The whole world has changed. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's really cool. I recommend checking it out at least once. Night of the Comet. It's definitely not, you know, James Cameron, but it's a low budget 1980s horror film that was, you know, created around the time of Return of the Living Dead. I don't know if you've seen like those like comedy / horror versions of like, you know, the Night of the Living Dead stuff. It's around that era, so like there is a little bit more humor to it than scariness, but definitely worth watching.
Awesome.
All right, word. My number 3 is The Exorcist, which is more mainstream. And it is my number 3 because there are other movies that I've watched more. They may not be as scary as The Exorcist was to me when I first saw it, but I've watched those more, so they, you know, kind of have gone down to my number 1 and number 2. But The Exorcist, everybody knows what that is. Originally based on a 1971 book written by William Peter Blatty, which was actually, he based that Exorcist story on something that happened to a 14-year-old boy. And that's how the book came about. But then the book was like selling a lot, and they decided to make a movie out of it in 1973. And that became probably one of the scariest movies of all time. It's one of the few movies that people actually went to go see it and had heart attacks in the movie and died. And I think the other reason why that movie is scary to me is I was raised Catholic. So the whole thing about possession and the devil being the epitome of evil and taking over a child's body, which is, you know, another form of innocence, is just really disturbing to me. I don't know, there's just a lot of, it's just that fear of the unknown and how something can kind of come into somebody's body, and you need priests, and it's a whole ritual, and it's just so archaic, like the whole ritual too, and I think that really freaks me out. But I mean, I don't really need to talk about it. Most people have seen The Exorcist, you know what I'm talking about, and of course the horrifying crab walk that she does backwards down the stairs is just ultimately terrifying to me, because they had a contortionist do that. It just doesn't look right. So that in itself is horrifying. So that's my number 3. And you're like giving me the look like you can't even deal. Like I can't watch it.
It was so creepy the first time I watched it. Like,
creepy.
so creepy.
I saw it the first time I saw The Exorcist. It was with my dad, and he was like, "You are only allowed to watch this with me if you sit on the couch next to me, watch it." And it was the TV version. So
okay.
So my dad probably wouldn't have let me see it if he knew a lot of that stuff was going to be cut out. And then like I think it was maybe like 10 years later, they re-released it in the theaters. And I went in and saw it with a buddy of mine, and I saw all the stuff that I didn't see. and it was horrifying.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
during the re-release though, like I think what you saw in the re-release was actually like a special edition, like where they actually added a bunch of stuff too.
They added things like there's when
Like that crab walk, I think, was added to the special edition. That wasn't in the original. That was actually a CGI
No, that was real. That was in the original. That was they hired a contortionist to actually walk backwards down the stairs.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I look it up. I know that because I've watched like behind the scenes and they talk about it. But in the re-release, the mother is walking through the house, and on the hood of the stove, you see a flash of a demon's face, which wasn't in the original.
Whoa.
And then that's supposed to be like, that it's watching her. And that face pops up in different points of the movie. But the scene that I didn't see when I was a kid, where she's basically stabbing herself in her like lady parts with the crucifix, like I had not seen that when I watched it with my dad, and I was like, what? So that was just seeing that, and then seeing it all over again as a older person with, all that added stuff was still horrifying to me. So that's my number 3. Ren, back to you, number 2.
I do have a question for you, Tone.
Yeah.
So that's your number 3 movie,
Number 3.
The Exorcist. Mm-hmm. Like number 3, like your top horror movies, right?
Yeah.
There's a really, 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 really well done television show
Called The Exorcist.
based on The Exorcist.
Yeah.
It's not called The Exorcist. It is based on The Exorcist, right?
Yeah.
My question to you is, this is one of your top 3 favorite horror movies. How are you neglecting to watch this show?
So my mother, being a huge fan of The Exorcist, watches the show and loves it. I think it's one of those shows that I've been meaning to watch, but it keeps slipping like my queue of things that I need to watch. Don has also watched it, really loves it. It's not something I'm neglecting. It's something that I just like, it keeps slipping my grasp and I forget to watch it. But that's something that I plan to watch because I've heard good things about it. It's just one of those things where I don't know, anytime something comes out that is like trying to latch on to something, I'm also a little like, there's a little bit of hesitation, and I guess I'm kind of contradicting myself because even though it's very different, I like the way I felt when I watched the movie. So like watching something, I don't know, it's weird, but
yeah,
I probably will check it out very soon because I do want to watch it. So so there you go. Cool. Ren, number 2.
My number 2 is going to be 1977 Suspiria.
Oh, all right. Suspiria.
Yeah, Suspiria.
I've seen parts of it. I haven't seen the whole thing.
It is a very strange movie. Like, if you're familiar with David Lynch's like visual little cues and stuff like that, it's similar to that, where it's got like reds and pinks and candy colors, and you really focus on the visuals. And it is about a ballet academy, but it's super terrifying. It's an Italian horror classic from Dario Argento, who's like a godfather of Italian horror. And it's super creepy. Around this time of year, you'll see theaters who actually play, film still. They'll do movie nights of it, and it's one of those movies you have to see.
Isn't that like I said, I don't remember seeing the whole thing, but all I remember was it something like, it was like an overseas location or something? Was it like Germany or something where it took place? Okay, all right, because I got that. That's all I remember, really.
Yeah, Germany.
Yeah, it's super dark, like from what I did see, but I just never finished it. Yeah, and that might be why I was like, this is making me feel uncomfortable.
Oh, totally.
Change it. So, but no, it's I gotta check that out.
Please do.
Yeah, the fact that it's your number 2, I might have to go back. All right, word. Cooley, number 2.
Shaun of the Dead.
All right, cool. So he's got some comedy in there.
It's a movie that took itself seriously enough to be like an actual zombie movie, but also focused on a character that was just like a down on his luck, like submissive type, like beta male character. And it was just kind of fun to watch him transform into the hero of the film. So it was great. I love like the use of like just like the character interaction and the like the parents and like, you know, just like how everything just kind of comes together and makes you feel like, you know, this dude is gonna die and there's nothing that anybody's gonna do, but he ends up like actually being very very resourceful. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a pretty funny movie. So if you haven't watched it, give it a shot, and watch it all the way through, because the beginning can be a little bit slow, and not necessarily very funny, but like all the stuff in the beginning of the movie is like, actually it all comes together in the end and like gives you that kind of like aha moment, and you know, makes you feel like it was all worth it, and it's just really well done.
I'd have to watch it again. I saw it once in theaters, and I thought it was like decent, but for me, it was just like, I feel like Shaun of the Dead also had like a lot of like British humor in it, and it wasn't.
You have to watch it like minimum 3 times to be like, this movie is amazing.
Okay, because the once I saw it, like I laughed, like don't get me wrong, but it was like I was like, you know, but a lot of people love it. It's like it's got that cult following.
Oh yeah.
So,
I mean, it's Edgar Wright.
Yeah.
And it's in the Cornetto trilogy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, you definitely want to, you know, watch like, you know, Hot Fuzz and
Hot Fuzz. I saw. Yeah, I saw that, and then I saw Shaun of the Dead in theaters. So I knew they were like connected.
And the End of the World.
I did not see that.
Yeah, The World's End.
Yeah, I didn't see The World's End. So.
Like
It's just a pub crawl.
Okay.
With aliens.
You want to watch the whole thing just to kind of get just the full experience, I should say. Like there's really nothing that connects the three aside from the inside jokes, and the inside jokes are really like what kind of brings everything to life once you've seen all three films.
Is The World's End? Wait a minute. Is The World's End the one where they're trying to get to a bar?
Yeah, they go. They
Then
go
I
through
did
a
see
giant.
that. I've seen all 3 then.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
With the creepy,
Yeah.
like, stilt walking alien. Yeah.
Okay. I've seen all 3 then. All right. Good to know. All right. Shaun of the Dead.
What's your number 2?
Number 2. So my number 2 was a tie originally, and then I narrowed it down to the number 2. It was a toss up between the original Alien and I'll tell you which one is my number 2. But Alien first was like, because I've seen it a lot. It was one of those first movies where it was like this thing that we'd never seen before. It super creeps me out with the face hugger, and everybody knows I'm a huge Alien fan. But it ended up being Fire in the Sky, which Fire in the Sky is not. I don't know if most people would consider it a horror movie.
I was just thinking that.
But it's also it was horrifying to me because one, it's based on a true story, the abduction of Travis Walton, and
Well, quote unquote true story.
it's a true story. Whether people believe that he actually got abducted is where that comes in. But he got abducted by aliens.
Like the true story of a fake story.
Right. Yeah. It was actually DB Sweeney actually played Travis Walton, and I cannot remember the guy's name, but he played the Terminator, the T-1000 in Terminator 2, the one that was the
liquid metal one.
Thank you,
Robert Patrick.
Robert Patrick. Thank you. He played Travis Walton's best friend. And anyway, he gets abducted by aliens in Arizona. They're all, loggers who basically cut down trees and stuff. But it wasn't the abduction that really terrified me. It was what happened when he had a flashback in the movie. He has he's still dealing with PTSD from this whole abduction, and they're having this welcome home party, and it's like too many people for him at once, and he freaks out. He crawls under a table, and his wife can't find him, and then she sees him, and she's trying to get him out from under the table, and he starts freaking out, and he knocks over this bottle of syrup on the table, and they show you the track going over the side, and then it falls off the side of the table, and for the angle where he is up against the wall, it hits right below his eye, and it triggers him to have this whole flashback of what happened to him. And I saw this when I was 13, and it freaked me out. I had nightmares for a week. I couldn't sleep. I was thinking I was going to get abducted. I was losing my shit.
Oh my God.
So for me, that movie mentally disturbed me. And I think that started my whole fascination with UFOs, and I started doing a bunch of research. So, but the whole scene is just terrifying. There's these aliens that he wakes up in this cocoon thing that he has to break out of, and then they grab him and drag him through. They put him on this operating table, put this thing over him and they're shoving stuff down his throat and doing all these weird operations. And like that, for me to see as a 14-year-old kid was horrifying. And it's more of like like a thriller, like a suspense. But that scene for me was like straight horror. So that's my number 2 is Fire in the Sky.
Wow.
Yeah. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend it.
I have not seen it.
It's like 90. It's like now it's probably 90s cheesy, but when I saw it, it was just like, it was terrifying to me.
Spooky stuff.
Yeah. So, yeah, Fire in the Sky.
Dope.
Ren, you're number 1.
My number 1.
What's your number 1?
This is like also one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
Which is why it's number 1. It's not necessarily like ultra spooky or anything.
Edward Scissorhands.
It is 1985's Fright Night.
Oh, yes.
This is one of my favorite movies of all time. It had a terrible remake.
With Colin Farrell.
Oh, yeah. And Anton Yelchin, or how do you
Yeah.
pronounce? Rip in peace, homie.
Yeah.
But
You know the guy from the original Fright Night's in that. He makes an appearance.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's pretty much a kid who, you know, he's going through like I got my girlfriend, I'm trying to bang her out. And he's got like the really nerdy friend. And then, a vampire moves in next door. Nobody believes him.
Good.
Like he just keeps seeing like women disappear into the house. There's like a maybe gay for the vampire carpenter does his like daytime duties.
Yeah. He's got some feminine qualities to
yeah.
it.
He's like, oh, I'm in love with you, Jerry Dandridge.
Yeah.
But it's ultimately terrifying because this kid loses his best friend, his girlfriend, to this vampire, and nobody believes him. Like he's just alone, and all these terrible things are happening next door. He loses everyone he loves, and it's his fight to try and get them back. And he does get his girlfriend back, but his best friend is gone. He's a vampire, and it's super terrifying because if you put yourself in that place and you were like, I'm a teen, I'm home alone, and everything bad is happening.
What drives me crazy is like those movies where people don't believe you.
Yeah.
And it's like you're trying to do like me. I always have that thought, like, what would I say from that? I'd be like, hey, remember that movie where like nobody believes the kid and then it ends up being true? This is happening. Like that's what I would say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And there's like a D-list like made for TV horror movie host who he's like, you can get rid of vampires, right? And he's like, no, like vampires aren't even real. And then he's like, oh my god, I'm an old guy and I have to do this. Vampires are real. Yeah. And he has like one friend in the entire world, and it's this old guy who is pretty much like Elvira, a horror movie host.
So good. I mean, not to mention you got Chris Sarandon playing the vampire.
Who also voiced Jack Skellington.
Yes, he did.
In Nightmare Before Christmas, but not the singing parts. Fun fact, Danny Elfman did those. You wouldn't know.
Mm-hmm. And also was I forgot the character, but the prince in Princess Bride.
Yeah.
A lot of people forget about that. So when we went to Terracon, he was there, Chris Sarandon, and Don actually met him, went up and was like, I got to meet this guy.
That's
awesome.
awesome.
He's a huge Fright Night fan. And I went up with him, and I didn't like want to necessarily meet him, but I was like, all right, cool. But he was wearing a glove. Like, I don't think he wanted to actually like shake people's hands.
Oh yeah. After the circuit doing that multiple years, I wouldn't.
So he, he was super nice, and I was like, nice to meet you, man. He was like, nice to meet you. And I was like, holy shit, it's the guy from Fright Night. That's weird. Like, it's just weird. Like when you see somebody in person, so surreal, but that's such a good number one. Hell yeah. All right. Love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cooley.
Let's take you back all the way to 1968.
Whoa.
1968. Before there was color, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember because I wasn't there. But this movie in particular was not in color. It is Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, nice.
George A. Romero, who passed away this year, I believe.
I didn't know that.
Yep, he did.
A true master of horror, terror, in the sense that he created this world in this Night of the Living Dead film that has endured, into present day. I mean, Kirkman will tell you in a heartbeat that Night of the Living Dead was the inspiration for The Walking Dead, with no bones about it. I mean, because it's not about the zombies. It's not about the people that are coming out of the grave and walking around. As a matter of fact, most of the film takes place inside of a house with survivors and people that are like trying to, stay alive. And the whole thing is based on these folks and their reactions to the environment and what's happening around them. So like just the concept of The Walking Dead as we know it and love it is that, we're focused on Rick and his survivors, and you have all these other groups of survivors that they encounter and how they react to the apocalypse, the zombie apocalypse, and how they deal with it and how they deal with each other as human beings and the humanity of it. That all comes from Night of the Living Dead. And a small house of survivors and how they dealt with the situation and how they dealt with each other and the psychology of it. So psychologically terrifying and very somber.
Yeah, that ending messed me up.
Yeah, talk about not having a happy ending.
Yeah.
This is like the grandfather of films like that. So
the most somber ending.
Yeah. So yeah, that is my number one horror movie of all time.
Good choice.
And yeah, that's it.
I like that it's an old like black and white film. They can still have that effect on you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How old were you when you first saw that?
Oh, I was I think I was like 7.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
What?
Jeez.
Yeah.
Oh my God, dude. How did you even know what was going on really? Like at 7? I mean, did this come on? They didn't know you were watching it?
Yeah. I just totally like just started watching it, and I saw like, like them going, like driving, and they, the car, like, I think they got a flat tire. I can't remember exactly what it was, but something happened to the car. It either ran out of gas or they got a flat tire, and they were on their way to a wedding, and the couple sees this guy walking around, and I'm just like, oh, this is interesting, and I'm watching it. And
was it? I thought it was the brother and sister visiting their mom at the.
Was it a brother and sister?
Yeah, I think it's brother and sister,
Yeah.
and they're coming to get you, Barbara.
The guy that they see walking around was like in a tux, though, right?
Yeah,
that's what it was.
Yeah.
All right, I knew something. There was.
I think they're like visiting like their mom or dad at the grave.
Yeah, so like they're there, and like I see the guy walking around, like, and I'm just like, okay, this is weird. And then all of a sudden I realized that it was like a dead dude, and I was like, this is awful.
Yeah.
And I was just stuck. Like I don't know, like if you've ever done this as a kid, but you start watching something and then you just freeze and you're just like mesmerized and you can't move, and you're just like watching it and you're sucked into it, and like you're now in the movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And now you just wait for it to be over. And when it's over, you're just like, you're probably still staring at the TV for a little while, just processing what you watched. And then you grow up to be somebody like me.
If you watched it as a kid, that is like, that's hyper realistic to watch as a kid.
Yeah.
Jesus.
And then the end has like almost war footage. Like if you've ever watched any kind of like war biopic, the end has that kind of footage.
Yes.
And it's like, oh my God.
Yeah. Dude.
And then, and from that point on, like I was like obsessed with like the undead, not necessarily just zombies, but like anything that was dead, but not dead, like vampires, mummies, zombies, ghouls, anything. And that just became this complete obsession. And it wasn't to the point where I was like investigating shit and trying to find actual zombies. It was just like, wow, this is like super entertaining. And like I'd look up like all the lore and the mythology around it, and like, like the mythology behind like, like the Greek underworld, and all that stuff just started fascinating me. And like that got me like into that became the springboard for getting into like comics and fantasy movies and shit like that. So like Night of the Living Dead really did inspire a ton of things that helped me become who I am.
Awesome. All right, man. That's awesome. I can't believe you saw that when you were 7.
Oh my God.
I just picture little Cooley sitting there like, I'm going to die. But I'm going to come back. Yeah. Oh my God. All right. Well, wow. All right. My number one is a movie that is in color. A 1975 Steven Spielberg film called Jaws.
Oh my gosh.
That is my number one horror film. I have probably watched that more times than anything. I actually didn't plan this, but I realized I'm wearing my paws shirt. It's basically a cat coming up and grabbing a mouse, like a parody of Jaws. But everybody...
Now, is this a movie that you think... is it technically classified as a horror movie, or do you classify it as a horror movie?
No, I think it's classified as a horror movie.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, it's yeah, definitely. I mean, if you go on
because I never looked at those as horror movies. Like,
well, actually, technically, I found it in a horror genre before, but
like I would call it like a thriller.
Yeah, it's a thriller, but I mean it's horror
or an adventure, like action, like thriller, where like those movies like Deep Blue Sea, this Orca.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh!
Oh God.
Yeah,
when the baby comes in.
Yeah.
Well, according to IMDb, it is an adventure drama thriller.
Wow, I nailed it.
But
Very
then
specific.
I've also looked up like top horror movies of all time, and Jaws is in there.
Oh yeah.
So
Okay.
I mean, there are a lot of.
I think it's like for people
horror
with fish
aspects.
phobias.
Yeah. Well, I think Jaws is one of the reasons why I don't go in the ocean.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, and I think that's what it is. And I probably would not have been that way if not for this movie. So, I mean, but it's horrifying, man. It's all about, it goes back to the way that it was filmed, right? Because if you have watched anything about Jaws, the shark that they built for this didn't work. So it went over 7 to 8 months of original filming by Universal because they couldn't get the shark to work. So Steven Spielberg, it was just one of his, I think his third film. He was 26 when he filmed it.
Wow.
And he actually, they thought he was going to get fired because it was going so over. But he had to rewrite the script like every day because they could not use the shark that was being built. So they filmed it with just like, the fin. You don't see the shark, but you know it's there. So, and that in fact, and that reason it makes the film more scary because you can't see what is there. So because the shark didn't work and they had to film it that way, the movie is more scary. And then when you finally see it and you see like some of the things that it's doing to people, like the kid at the beach just gets ripped apart.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then there's the guy that's in that little canoe where you actually see that he gets like dragged down and his leg gets ripped off. Quint at the end gets taken underwater by him. I mean, there's a lot of like horrifying aspects to that movie, and I think it's that sharks are real, and there have been shark attacks. I mean, there are few, but I mean, I think it just goes back to me like something that actually is real. Like Night of the Living Dead, I think is a scary movie, right? Like when you watch it for the first time, it's got a lot of weird undertones, and it makes you feel helpless at some points. But you, at the end of the day, you're like, oh, it's not real. But like,
I'll just to be
personally, and that's me.
just to be I'm sorry, not to be a dick, but Night of the Living Dead is as real as that shit gets. Like, because you can take the zombies, right? Replace that with anything. Replace that with a tornado, hurricane. Any scenario where you have any kind of natural disaster that may force people to feel helpless, right? And congregate in a single area where and these are strangers that don't know each other. Now you have that psychological thriller that can happen at any time, at any point. It's definitely something that can happen. That's not a fantasy. Like I think more like maybe like a Friday the 13th might be.
All right, cool. That makes sense.
Yeah, something like what you're thinking of, like using as a comparison.
Right. Yeah. All right. That's a good point. So, I mean, something that I can't classify as like, like a horror movie, like
or Fire in the Sky.
Yeah. I mean, it's like there are some movies that I watch where it's a little bit more easy to deal with because it's like I know that's like something that's not real. But when I watch a movie like Jaws, I know that there are sharks out there and stuff like that could happen. I mean, obviously, it's a 25-foot shark. It's ridiculous. It's a little over the top. But I mean, like, that's horrifying, So that movie would be my number one, and I think I've watched that more than anything. I watch it every 4th of July.
It plays into the
Nice.
fear of the unknown, which terrifies
Yeah.
people because the ocean is like one of the most unexplored things. And people don't know anything about sharks. They know that they bite people, and they don't put the research into it. Like, hey, it's because they're testing things out. It's like
Right.
they don't eat people. They chomp, and they're like, that's not a seal, bye.
Yeah.
And Peter Benchley, who wrote the book, was so devastated
Yes.
that he did that because people went out and they like hunted
killing
sharks.
sharks.
Like the Chinese industry of, you know, shark poaching is still crazy, but people were like, we need to kill all the sharks. And there were like huge payouts for sharks. And he was so devastated by this that his foundation still is like one of the largest contributing factors or
For like
founders
shark preservation,
yeah, shark preservation, just like sea life preservation. But like that had, I think that's the horror movie that had like the biggest fallout.
Yeah.
Even though it isn't technically horror, it goofed people up of all ages about the ocean.
Well, at the time, my father was like an avid water skier, like all the time. And when that movie came out, my dad actually didn't go water skiing for a month.
Yeah.
He was like, it screwed him up. He's like, okay, I'm not going in the ocean, you know? So it's like, I think everybody has that fear, you know, when you go out into the ocean.
You can't see what's in the
can't
ocean.
see what's there, and that's the most horrifying
And it just
part.
puts that
You
little
know what
bit.
makes me not go in the ocean?
What?
The ocean.
The ocean, just the
Yeah,
water.
just
yeah.
the water. Like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Honestly, this summer I saw a crab, like the size of like a little trick-or-treating pumpkin. I saw a crab that big holding a clam upside down. It was swimming with just its back legs, and it came near me, and I flipped the F out, and I haven't been back in the water since then. I've gone to the beach like twice after that. Didn't go in the water.
Everybody bust my balls about like, oh, you don't go in the ocean. I'm like, yeah, man. Have you noticed how close sharks are getting to the shore now? Like 4 feet of water. Have fun, man. They're great whites, mako sharks. They're all coming to the Cape Cod coast because a lot of seals are actually coming closer, and that's their food. So if you want to be mistaken for a seal, go for it, man. I'm not going in the ocean. I'll swim in a pool. Don't
Are
care.
sharks that dumb, though?
But they're not. It's not that. It's like you're basically.
Are they like, yo, what a weird-looking seal?
But any like water or anything, it's like, why even take a chance? You know what I mean? Because if
They sense thrashing. They have the snout of a shark has millions of electrosensors. It's called the ampullae of Lorenzini, and they just sense like thrashing.
What's it called?
Ampullae of
Lorenzini.
Lorenzini.
Who the fuck is Lorenzini?
He's the guy
The
who figured out
scientist who
that the
figured it out.
snout amplifies all kinds of things.
it picks up electrical signals. So if
Yeah.
or like if there's like a fish in distress or something.
Yeah,
with
they
flash-
I
go
thought
for
you
the
said Lorenzini. Like,
No, Lorenzini,
Two
like an
names.
Italian last
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
But
So
yeah,
I was like, remember Lorenzini?
they have to put less work into it. So if they sense like a kid like thrashing about, they're gonna hope it's a hurt seal, and they're just gonna be like, here's an easy snack. They chomp, and then they're like, that's not what I thought it was. Bye, and they let it go.
well, it's like in the movie, Roy Scheider, the chief roadie, basically says, he's like, if you open up the beaches on the 4th of July, he's like, all of that is actually like ringing the dinner bell. You know, like they're gonna come because it's all this activity, and they sense that, and they come closer, and that's what happens. But see what I mean? Like just the fact, like this movie, like a lot about sharks.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like you've seen it, I've seen it. Like everybody knows what you're talking about when you say Jaws in that movie. It's just like that's why it's my number one. It's just
There should be a movie called The Ampullae of Lorenzini.
that's actually kind of cool. That would be awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, with that being said, those are our. See, man, sometimes I can't. Those are our 3 top horror movies.
Horror.
Those are our top 3 horror movies, kid. So we'll be back in a little bit. Now let's just take a second to hear a little bit about our sponsor. Supply and demand investing. Guys, not all investments are created equal. Did you know growth stocks devote most of their revenue in trying to expand or grow the company and offer investors little to no dividend payout?
Sounds like fucking bullshit.
Right? But value stocks split their revenue between trying to expand or grow the company and give their buyers dividend payouts.
That sounds better.
But the question is, which of these two means of investing do you think has performed better over the past 10 years? Well, to find out, go to supplyanddemandinvesting.com/redbeard. That's us, guys. Go to supplyanddemandinvesting.com/redbeard. Supply and demand investing helps compare investments in the hopes of delivering better than average results, whether they be long-term, short-term, or just something in the middle. And remember, like any good sports team,
Like the New York Football Giants.
yeah, when it comes to investing, there are times to play offense by investing in things like the S&P 500, and times to play defense by investing in things like bonds, CDs, or cash. So I say, go Patriots!
Yeah, but if we're talking defense, it's the New York Football Giants all day.
Yeah, but it's the Pats because they won last year.
Hello, creeps. It's me, John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper. You're listening to Tony and Cooley on the RedBeard Podcast.
So all of us know what ghosts are, and it's Halloween, so they're everywhere. So, Cooley, you don't believe in ghosts.
Nope.
Ren, do you believe in ghosts?
I believe in the paranormal.
Okay, that's a good answer. All right. I believe in ghosts for a lot of different reasons. Like close family members of mine have seen stuff. And they are not the type of people to lie about stuff like that. So for that reason, I mean, I believe in them. But Ren, you and I were talking the other day, and you said that you have had some experiences. Mm-hmm. We would love to hear them.
Okay.
So go for it.
So I grew up, this is a preface. I grew up in a house that was built, I think, in 1892. It was an old farmhouse and like the first in the area, and they just built houses around ours. Yeah. It's on like, it's my house, a house across from us, and then it's just straight up woods and a river. So like that's where I lived for 25 years of my life.
Okay.
So it's pretty spooky area. There's a cemetery like 50 yards from my house. That's pretty spooky. There's an assisted living home where they like straight up walk people around the block on stretchers. So I grew up in like a weird area.
Yeah, even that's legit.
Yeah, like you just be playing in the yard and you're like, oh, freaking K. Yeah. All right. So it's weird. But my house, so the only person that we know like died at the house was the woman who owned it before us. Husband was like mowing the yard and had like a heart attack. And I think his name was Dave, or that's what we just called him. So whenever anything spooky happened in the house, Mom was like, oh, hey, Dave. But like weird shit would happen where you'd try to debunk it, but it was always really creepy. Like drafts where there wouldn't be a reason to have a draft. And,
just like weird changes in temperature.
Yeah, weird changes in temperature and like weird things with electrical. And one time the microwave, like the letters just like spazzed out, the numbers on it spazzed out, and then it said hey, and then it said dog, and I was like, nope, and just and just unplugged it, and I was like, absolutely not, like absolutely not, like just like, and then like this was before like yo dog like happened, like this was when I was much younger, but it was like D-O-G, not D-O-double-G. But like it was super weird, and I was like, nope. And we'd be left home a lot. We had this gate in our backyard. My dad built a gate because our backstore neighbors were all kids around our age, and like the gate would just fly open even though it was locked. Like the lock would just like be unlocked for some reason, fall out, and just like swing violently. The screen door would pop open and like swing violently. Just like lots of really weird things. There was also a creepy attic in between my bedroom, because it was like a crawl space attic. It wasn't like an above attic, and like weird shit was found in it.
Yeah.
And you would hear like creepy, like bumpy noises in it, even though there was no like hot water pipe. There was no like heating pipe to run through there. There was nothing in there.
Yep.
You just hear like creepy bumping noises, and not like rat bumping noises, like violent bumping noises.
Yeah.
And that's where my bed was.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
It wasn't cool.
Yeah, no. That was sarcastic. That's me being scared for you.
Yeah. But like creepy shit happened all the time. And there was other things like condensation on the walls would just like drip down. Like there'd just be like weird drops on the wall that would come down.
And it was like blood.
No, it wasn't like blood. It was just like, it would be like wet. But like the roof was fine. There were no water pipes or anything. It would just be like condensation would form on this one wall. And just like weird shit.
Yeah. Have you ever seen like an apparition?
No, I've never seen an apparition. I don't know if I necessarily believe in like intelligent haunts, but I believe in like residual haunts where energy's been around and is so strong in an area that maybe somebody might see something, but it's always the same
they've said too, like if you see somebody walk through a wall, if you do research at one time, there's probably a door there.
Yeah,
you know, so it's like a residual haunting, totally.
Yeah, but have you ever seen anybody walk through a wall?
I haven't, but other people have. Did you know that I've spoken to a couple custodians that work in the mall, and they've been working there since the mall first opened?
Oh yeah, I've heard all kinds of stories at the mall.
They've actually, there was a guy that I spoke to. He's been there forever, man. And like sometimes I would see him in the elevator and we'd start talking. And it was like last year around this time, he was like, yeah, he's like, it came up, and he said that he was in the parking garage on level like B3 or something like that, and he was like cleaning some stuff up. It was late at night, and he saw like a legit like woman walk right through one of the walls of the parking garage, and he was like, yep, that's it, I'm going home.
There's been so many deaths at that mall, like so many suicides, so many deaths, like it's wild. And I've heard all kinds of stories, especially if you go to the pizza place in the food court, they'll tell you all kinds of crazy stories, because they just like, they've had haunts at the pizza place where like the main lady there was making pizza dough, and then she felt like she heard the door open and someone walk in, and then someone walk out, and like someone like touch her shoulder, and she turned around and she's like, what? And then there was nothing there, and she was like, nope. But yeah, I totally believe it. The mall in the first like month it was open had like 2 suicides or something like that. People like falling off the escalators.
Yeah, dropping like 5 floors. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also one of the other custodians there. He said that one night he had closed up, and he was walking past down there where Citizens used to be, and he heard like music, and he was like, what? And he like went back, and the entire like Build-A-Bear store was lit up, and like stuff was on.
Which
like,
they could have been like someone working in there, which is more than likely.
There was no one there though. Like there was no one in the store anymore. And I mean, like things like that could be
you,
like
you
an
can
electrical
debunk
thing.
it so
you know
easy.
what I mean? Like who knows? But like strange, yes. Possibly something else, maybe.
I think it's all
still weird.
I think it's all in the strength of the mind. I think even if they're like, if we could dull down our minds right now, we might see something, but our mind tricks us into saying like, no, there's nothing there, or like we can't see our nose on our face, even though we should be able to see our nose at all times. It's only when we're like really focusing on it, or we're really tired, we're like, oh, that's my nose in front of my face. I feel like a lot of these experiences are when people are like really, really tired and it's really late at night, and you know, your brain can allow you to see crazy shit. Right. Not to say that you're, you know, delusional and you're seeing these things. That's one thing. Or that your mind's just like not sharp enough to trick you out of not seeing it.
I mean, I definitely believe in like your mind playing tricks on you.
Yeah.
That's happened to me.
Totally.
I mean, I've said before, like, not going to tell the whole story, but like when I was a kid, you know, my dad brought in like a bike really quick for my sister, which was before Christmas, and like said Santa just dropped it off, and like I literally looked outside and saw like these reindeer hoofs fly by the window. Like it totally didn't happen, but I saw it. Like I can still see it. My mind made me see that. So seeing something that vivid, you know, and then knowing like that your mind can play tricks on you, that's totally possible. So I believe in that. I mean, like I think one of the coolest experiences, I can't, you know, I wasn't there, but like close to me was my grandmother saw something. This was a couple of years after my grandfather passed away. She was in her kitchen, and my grandmother didn't even tell me this, which was weird. Like my dad was like, "Hey, did you know that grandma saw us?" I'm like, "When?" He's like, "Oh, a couple months ago." I was like, "What?" So like I asked my grandmother, and she said, "Yeah." She goes, "I was in the kitchen making like toast." She goes, "And I felt like somebody was in the kitchen with me." She's like, "And I turn around." She goes, "And there's a blue haze in the middle of my kitchen." She goes, standing there. She goes, "And I couldn't really see anything, but below that I saw pants and shoes." She goes, "And they were same shoes and pants your grandfather used to wear."
Weird.
She goes, "So I stood there and I wasn't afraid of it. The shoes turned around." She goes, "And walked out to the kitchen and then turned the hallway." She goes, "And I followed it." She goes, "And right as it turned the hallway, I turned immediately after and it was gone." She goes, "And I don't know what it was." She goes, "But I think it was your grandfather checking up on me." You know what I mean? But it's like my grandmother, like, she believes in that stuff, but it's like, not like she was looking for anything.
Right.
You know, it just was there, you know? So she was just going about her normal day, you know, and like that happened. So it's not like she was, you know, didn't visit like a psychic or something, you know, it's just so random. So, I don't know. I mean, like I haven't seen anything. I've gone, you know, the stupid ghost hunting you do with your friends, and like we try to get like EVP stuff, and like we've been to the Lad Center and Exeter and all this stuff, and we've never seen anything. And as I've gotten older, I'm like, do I want to see something?
No, you
because
definitely
if I do,
don't.
I'm probably gonna lose my shit.
I've had like one visitation dream, I'll call visitation.
Yeah.
I've never dreamt about my grandmother. Like, she's one person who went out of her way to relate to me. Like, when I was a super weird gothy teen, she's like, "I read a book about black market organ thievery." And I was like, cool. Like, she just went way out of her way to be super accepting, and she was awesome. Never had a dream about her. I was like in a really bad way in my last job, and like things were not going well for me. And I got like a visitation, quote unquote, dream from her where she's like, everything's going to be fine. And like, I ended up getting a new car. I ended up getting a new job. Everything evened out with like my living situation. And I was like, that was weird.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know that I was going to get a car at all. Like, I was just like, hey, it's probably a good idea that I look into this. And everything just happened to fall into place super strangely. So, and then I never had a dream about her again.
That's cool.
So it's like, huh. And like, I woke up crying without even like recalling the dream first. So I was just like, that was super weird.
Yeah. That's cool. Cooley, by your silence, I can tell you're like just like whatever about all this stuff. But you actually went to a psychic recently and had a reading done, and you said that like after that, some things started to make sense. So I mean, like, how does that affect the way you feel about things?
Not, it doesn't really, because just like nothing was like overly specific.
Yeah.
And I told you during the podcast before I went to go and see the medium that she would have to be specific.
Yeah.
Right.
With things. Like, you can't just throw out a bunch of names and like be like, which one makes sense to you? Like, you know, it's like,
yeah.
All right. I don't know, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Paul, any of those, anything? David? Yeah, David. Oh, David's here. Cool.
David's still alive.
Imagine their credibility out the window.
I mean, no, there were things that she seemed like she was like kind of spot on about, but there were things but they weren't specific. It was just generalizations.
Yeah.
That could have fit for anybody. So, it was interesting. I mean, I would probably do it again with like another one just to see like, you know, what they can do or whatever. But I mean, like I have not been impressed yet, and I just don't. Yeah, man. Like I feel like you said, like I mean, I feel the opposite though. Like you said, Ren, that you know, like you think it's like, you know, you get tired and you're like, you know, on your way to sleep, and like your brain starts to like, you know, allow you to see things.
Yeah.
I think you're tired and you're on your way to sleep and your brain is just like fucked up because like you're on your way to sleep and you're just like you start dreaming before you close your eyes.
Kind of like when you go in the basement as a kid and you're like, there's a monster there, even though you know there's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like your brain is just like, yo, you should be in bed right now sleeping, but you know you're not, so I'm just gonna start without you. Bye. And I think that's like, you know, because like I mean even recently, like, you know, like I'd be falling asleep and I would hear like voices and I'd be like, oh shit, and then I'd be like, oh yeah, I was definitely on my way out, and then I would just go to sleep. I mean, I just don't like. I mean, like your situation. As you're describing it, I'm saying to myself, man, like you are just like set up to have your imagination run wild. Like seriously, like I mean, you're living in
a spooky house.
Yeah, you're like in the Nightmare Before Christmas land. I don't buy any of it. I just don't like it. There's nothing that makes me feel like there's like actual factual communication with like the other side.
I think it's limited
or contact
for adults. Like psychics, it's hard for me to believe in. Like I'll see medium shows and like Teresa Caputo from the Long Island Medium. Sometimes she just gets so specific where I want to believe that there's, you know, like an afterlife and that someone can be tapped into that. But then other times I'm very skeptical and I'm just like, there's a good chance.
Teresa's the one that I need to meet. I need to meet Teresa because if like she comes up to me and she tells me some specific shit, I'm gonna be like, okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
So, but like the one only medium that I actually have watched on TV that I actually believe, Teresa Caputo, maybe, but like the Hollywood medium, the young kid, he's like he doesn't know who any of these people are before he meets them, and he met like TLC, and he's like talking to this lady, and she's like, "Do you know who I am?" And he's like, "I don't know who you are," and she's like, and then she shows him the album. And he's like, I don't know what this is. And she had to like explain to him, but he's like saying specific stuff about like Left Eye who died, where she died, how she died. Like he doesn't know all this stuff. However, some of this stuff, I will back up for a second. Some of this stuff, it's the Hollywood medium. All of that stuff could have been found online.
Wikipedia, like
totally.
Easy.
The only one that actually really made me believe in this kid was he met Alan Thicke. Before he died and did an interview with him. And they showed the tape. He was talking to him and he said, he goes, I'm just getting like a feeling. He's like, is there anybody in your family with like heart disease or like heart palpitations and he's like, no, nobody in my family. He's like, I don't know why I keep seeing this vision of a heart in my head. He's like, and I can't get it out. He goes, and it's just telling me there's something heart related. That maybe you should look into or whatever. And then 2 months later, he dies of a heart attack. And then they end up showing the tape to his wife. I mean, like that for me, it could be coincidence.
I feel like there's so many people die from heart related things like heart disease and heart attacks and all kinds of things are mostly heart related. So I feel like that's an easy out. Like, yeah, it's spooky that correlated. But I feel like Hollywood medium is tough because any one of those people that he's going to be interviewing, he can just wicked easily be like, here's all this internet info before he even goes into it. Like, if you don't know TLC, that's bull crap because everybody knows no scrubs. Like, you can be like, oh, young kid. Like, he wouldn't happen to know, you know, maybe like New Kids on the Block specifically. But everybody knows TLC because of those, like, two specific songs that they had. So I'm really like skeptical about that. Teresa Caputo, I'm skeptical on too because like Long Island's only so big and she's just around Long Island all the time. But like, I don't know. I think for adults it's harder to see those paranormal things. I think for like kids and animals, I've seen like some real specific stuff with kids and animals on shows where I'm like, oh, that's spooky. When like I saw a kid who he's like, oh yeah, this is so and so. He wears headphones though, and you know he's really good at drums and blah blah blah. And there was like a kid who lived like 3 decades before, who was like an adult man who had headphones because he was autistic and he was a drummer, and like the kid would have had no way of knowing that. And as they're interviewing, they're like, oh well, where do you see him? And he's like, I see him like here. And they're like, oh, like in this room? And he's like, no, he's right here. And I was like, whoa. Like, I've seen specific stuff with kids.
That stuff always freaks me out. Like when I was joking with Don the other day, or this is actually a while ago. I don't say the other day, but he has when he had his first kid, she'd be upstairs and like we would hear her talking to herself, and I'm like, yo, like what's Gianna doing? And he's like, oh yeah, she just like talks to herself sometimes. And I'm like, right, but it seems like she's having a conversation with somebody. And he's like, oh yeah, that's her imaginary friend. I'm like, bro, so maybe you should probe a little bit more, because if she's talking to somebody and having a conversation, like I understand the imaginary friend thing, but like that's a pretty in-depth conversation for a 3 or a 4-year-old.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like I just like for me, if my kid ever said like imaginary friend, like tell me about your friend, like let's figure out what the hell's going on.
And then it's like oh, my friend's painted
really
red with blood.
Like if it's her imaginary friend, cool, but like I'm asking some questions.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like just because we gotta be protective, you know. I don't know, like that stuff freaks me out.
Yeah, if there's like a conversation going on,
right,
that's some shit.
Yeah, you're answering questions that like I don't even think you understand yet. You know, I don't know. It's weird.
I don't know. It's just, I mean, it's the shit like the, you know, those like paintings that you see at the mall that, you know, you look at them and like if you look and you,
it's like a pretty lady and then it's a skeleton.
Like, or you could see the boat.
You mean like the magic eye?
Like the shit like where you, it's all different colors and patterns
Oh,
and stuff like that. And if you look at it like
only
close
specific people can see it if like the right angle.
Is that what the supernatural is like? Because I feel like it's just like how do all these other people that claim to have seen all this stuff, right? How do how come nobody else sees it? Like I don't that's what I don't get. It's like, are you serious? Like
I don't know. I think it has to do with like you know,
I'm special.
I feel like if you go looking for stuff, you know what I mean, you probably won't see it, you know, but it's all about
this shit isn't love, man. This is the supernatural. Like, I mean, we're talking about like forces that are supposed to be there. If they're there, they're there. Why can't we see them?
I don't, dude, I can't explain that for you. That's why it's like unknown. And I feel like there are some people that just are more spiritually open to it. And maybe that's why they're more receptacle to it. Like receptacle. They're more, susceptible to it. I just think it's interesting. It's unexplainable. That's why, I mean, it's cool to kind of talk about this stuff. Then again, dude, I mean, I would love to see something, but I never have, you know. It's super strange, man. You know, it really is. I think if I was to see something, like, I hope that I would be more of like a positive experience. Like, I don't want to see like some weird thing's going to scare the shit out of me. Like but it goes down to, so I have friends that don't believe in this stuff, and then they see stuff, and then it changes how they think about everything. Like, one of my friends was dropping his sister off to work in Exeter, right? Knows about the lad school, but doesn't give a shit. It's a school that was for people with mental disabilities that was shut down in the 80s because there were orderlies raping the patients. People were getting beaten. It was a horrible place, right? They shut it down. The state shut it down. It's there. A lot of people say it's haunted, whatever. But there's a rehabilitation clinic that was built right next to that for people that have like drug abuse and trying to go through the whole process, right? So my friend is dropping off his sister to work and drops her off, and then later he comes back, picks her up, and they're going out, and he's talking to his sister in the car looking, and she says, "Oh my God, stop," and he slams on the brakes and looks right in front of him, and there's like a 14-year-old girl in like a hospital gown standing in the middle of the road. He gets out to see if he can help her. Girl disappears. And he was like, what the hell was that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, he couldn't explain it, but he's like, dude, she literally disappeared in front of my face. Right. He's like, I got out because I thought I needed to help this person. Turns out she wasn't really even there. So she's leaving work. He's driving her out of work, not thinking about this, just having a conversation, and this happens. You know, so stuff like that. You know, it's super interesting. I mean, the only other, probably the coolest thing that I've ever heard too, and I don't know if this has happened to a couple people. if you read like Rhode Island ghost stories, there's something called, it's going to be funny for me, but it's called the redheaded hitchhiker. They're a hitchhiker of 44.
Oh,
And,
I've
like,
heard hitchhiker.
in Route 44 in Massachusetts, there have been people that have been driving down the road and they see a hitchhiker on the side of the road that has like red hair. He's wearing like jeans and a white t-shirt or like a long like button down white shirt. And they pass him and keep going. And this 3 or 4 people have said that they passed this hitchhiker and then he was sitting in the back seat in their car. And this one woman like freaked out. She pulled over to the side of the car and like it was gone. And she called the cops and the cops were like, we can't find anybody. She's like, there was somebody in my back seat.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not stupid and whatever. So, I mean, that's an interesting story. A lot of people have had that. I played a joke on my friend once where we were in Route 44 and we were way ahead of him. And I was like, I told my buddy, I was like, hey man, like drop me off. Like just drop me off. And I was like, literally had like a white shirt on and jeans.
Oh, no.
And I started walking down the street with my thing out and I see my buddy's truck coming down and like, you know, when you see somebody coming down and they slowly pull like away from the side.
Yeah.
So he gets into like the opposite lane to be like, what? And like he keeps going. And so then we finally met up. He's like, yo, where'd you go? I thought you were in front of us. I was like, yeah, man, we stopped at a convenience store to get some gum or whatever. And so I was like, so I think you like passed us. And then he's like, yo, dude, we were driving and I think I saw that guy. He's like, had red hair. He was wearing a white shirt, jeans. Like, dude, did you see anybody? I was like, no, I didn't see anybody. And I was like, what did you say he was wearing? He's like, a white shirt, jeans. And as he's telling this to me, he's looking at me and he goes, oh man, fuck you. he's like saying what he's wearing and realize I'm wearing the same thing. I was like, yeah, man, it was me. I was like, I have red hair. I'm wearing a white shirt and jeans. But you know, like, so you play pranks on people, but it's crazy how like something as simple as that made him think he actually saw. Oh yeah. You know, I mean, it's clearly just, you know, his friend that he didn't recognize. That's the funny thing.
Yeah. So weird.
Yeah. So I don't know, but I think it was fun to talk about this stuff, being that Halloween's coming up this weekend or on Tuesday rather. So I don't know. Anybody else got anything else they want to add? Jigsaw comes out tonight. I'm gonna check it out. It's probably gonna be horrible, but whatever.
It's gonna be not good.
Yeah, it's gonna be dumb, but it's gonna be a lot of stupid deaths and dumb people making bad decisions, but it's gonna be fun.
Absolutely.
Whatever. You got anything, Cooley?
I got nothing.
Nothing.
All right, we'll see you guys next week on the RedBeard Podcast. Until then, take it easy and happy Halloween. Thanks for listening to this episode of the RedBeard Podcast. And remember, please make sure to like us on our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and subscribe to us on YouTube and iTunes to make sure you get all of our latest videos and episodes. And you can always find us and comment on anything we've talked about or what you'd like to hear at redbeardpodcast.com.